Good morning. This is a pretty short video. It is again on the 1 through 6 drill. Last month we talked about the transitions between the targets. This month we're talking about using our range or our angles to manipulate kind of the arc of our swing to change where it's going to impact on the opponent. So sword swings, they come in arcs, they don't come in straight lines. And so by shifting side to side, forward and back, and even where we place our hands, we can change where our sword is going to impact the opponent. And this is important because it changes openings. So I have my handy glaive here as an example. And I think the easiest example is if you have an opponent that tends to have wide parries, if you swing normally, you're just going to run into their sword. But by shifting, and I like to shift more side to side than forward or back, you can change where your arc is going to impact the opponent. So I have my pillow here and I have my starting to die, but you can still see I have these kind of center line pieces of tape. And the glaive is going to, just as an example, I don't put this up when I drill, but it's an example of what I'm talking about. So if we picture the glaive being the opponent's weapon, if I throw a normal number one target and I stand here and I throw an arc, I'm going to run into the opponent's parry, right? I'm not going to hit them. But if instead I shift to this side, I can come inside that, and now see I'm kind of hitting on the front of the opponent. So I'm still throwing the number one cut, kind of that onside head target, but rather than hit kind of their temple, I'm going to shift out to the side, and now I can hit more kind of in front of their eye or their nose. When I do this in sparring, I actually think about, rather than hitting their temple, I think about sliding out and having my tip coming into their eye. So I'm using my range and angles to adjust the arc of my weapon where it's going to hit my opponent. So again, this glaive is just here to kind of represent opponents, especially a wide parry. If you have an opponent that tends to have these wide chasing parries, this is one way that you can take advantage of that. So again, normal cut is going to hit the glaive, but if I step out to the side, I'm going to throw the same cut. It's still a number one, but now I'm kind of hitting the front, and the pieces of tape are kind of a nice way to think about that. You of course can do that with an offside as well. So if I step out to the side, my arc is now going to hit the front of the weapon. So I don't, like I said, I don't really stick the glaive there when I'm drilling, but I will mix in these kind of frontal attacks to make sure that I'm mixing in and that my brain is computing different angles. So you could very easily hit standard number one, standard number two, shallow number one, to a standard number three, number one, step out, shallow four, and you're just going to mix them in. You can also do this with angle changes. So again, if I throw a standard number one, it would hit the pillow if it was there, but if I start and then I step out and come vertically, I can go inside my opponent's wide parry and hit them. And this is still going to be kind of more on the front. So if I step out and then down, I'm still hitting the front, and I will aim for these lines on the pel. So that's really the only thing that is different in terms of the equipment, is that if you don't have a center line on the pel, you don't need one, but it might be nice to have just to give you a visual cue where you're kind of stepping out, making sure that your shallow arc is going to cut, or you're changing your angle and coming down inside the opponent's wide parry. You can put a stick to represent the parrying weapon, but I don't think that you need to. And then play with even range. So I like to do this with side to side motion, but range does change. If I have a nice deep step, I'm very high and I'm hitting quite deep on my weapon and very much to the side on the pel. If I stay a little more shallow out, I'm hitting more on the tip, and you can see it's not directly on the line, but it is more in the front of the opponent. So depending on your range forward and back, your arc is going to intercept them more shallowly or more deeply, and then stepping to the side, your arc is going to hit them more deeply, and then to the side it's going to hit them more shallow. And these are fun manipulations, and so you just mix them in to make sure that you're changing what you're doing, and it's going to add another layer of depth and complexity to your 1 through 6 drill. If you are an SEA heavy combatant and you like to throw wraps, think about a line on the back of your opponent, because a wrap, depending on your depth, is also going to hit in a different place. That's not something that I do because I don't choose to throw wraps, but if you are an SEA armored combatant that does throw wraps, think about how your range and your angle is going to change the depth of where even that wrapping arc is going to hit on your opponent. It's going to add quite a bit of depth and complexity to your 1 through 6 drill, and hopefully this will give you even more to practice. Thanks a lot.